Hi, this is the Landscape Ontario podcast. I'm Scott Barber, and today I'm joined by landscape designers, authors, and podcasters Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing. They've recently published Down the Garden Path, a step-by-step guide to your Ontario garden, which shares the name with their podcast, which airs live each week on Reality Radio 101 and is also available on all the major podcast apps. Joanne and Matthew believe it's both important and possible to have great gardens that are low maintenance. We're going to discuss their new book, plus why they're so passionate about sharing horticultural knowledge. That is coming up next. So Joanne and Matthew, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast today. Really excited to get to hear more about both of you and your new book. But first, let's just learn a little bit more about you guys. And would you mind telling the audience a bit about your backgrounds? Joanne, would you mind starting?
Sure, I'm happy to. Thank you for having us. I'm Joanne Shaw with Down to Earth Landscape Design, and Matt and I are the co-hosts of a podcast as well. And my background is landscape design, and and helping the clients, design their space, and then doing our podcast together. We really started this journey of wanting to help people keep their gardens low maintenance and down to earth. That's hence the Down to Earth, Down the Garden Path podcast. Practical and easy advice for them to do their gardens. And I did my landscape design certificate at Ryerson, now I believe the Toronto Metropolitan University, at about 15 years ago. So yeah, and I've a long journey of working in Durham region, supporting lots of customers, clients. I worked for some local nurseries as well over the years. So yeah, that's a little bit about my background.
Awesome. Matthew, how
Awesome.
about yourself?
Yeah, thank you again, Scott, for letting us come on the podcast and talk about our new book. We really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, I'm Matthew Dressing. I, a little more recently than Joanne, started my own landscape design and horticultural consultation firm named Natural Affinity Garden Design. A bit about my background. I've been in the industry for just over 20 years. I went to Niagara College. I have my landscape and hort tech diplomas through them. I've always been in design and doing some design, but most of my background is a little bit of landscape design, construction, maintenance, and then a large retail component. And I have always enjoyed just helping people find solutions to their everyday garden dilemmas and questions. So that's what I really enjoyed about the retail sector. And I'm really enjoying being able to do it on a larger scale now, privately for my own clients, finding low maintenance solutions to their everyday lifestyles or to fit their everyday lifestyles. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
Thanks, Matthew. Yeah, no, it's great to meet you guys on here and to get this chance. I love to move to your new book, Down the Garden Path, a step-by-step guide to your Ontario garden. I have one here. Looks absolutely fantastic. Really looking forward to checking it out. Can you guys tell us how did this come to pass? What inspired you to create this project?
Well, I have to say it was kind of a slow burn, and a few things came together. I mean, as a landscape designer, I started like over 10 years ago now. You design a garden, you install it for people, and then you just leave them, right? Like it's not good. And so but then I couldn't respond to, people would email me questions about after the fact, like, what about this? And what's wrong with this? And what do I do now? And so I started a newsletter, and so that I could, because I couldn't be responsive, but I thought I could be proactive and say, okay, everybody, this is what you do this month, this is what, and just break it down that way. And it was very successful, and kind of based on that theme, Matt can speak a bit more to the podcast. When we had that avenue, we started August in the garden, like the last Monday of the month was August in the garden, let's say, for the next month, telling people almost the same things, with Matt kind of helped me build on that. And together we've had these podcasts for 2 years in a row, and they were our most successful podcasts, right, Matt?
Yeah, exactly. So I joined Joanne. She had started the podcast on realityradio101.com, and she was doing this for a number of years, and
Mhm.
she had me on as a guest. And so I joined her, and I joined her in this monthly in the garden episode, and I slowly brought my own notes and my own information to it. And so, and this was before I kind of knew that she had the newsletter and kind of didn't. So I was
Mhm.
able to kind of bring in some unique things. And it's like, oh, yeah, it's kind of like my newsletter. And as Joanne described, it just very quickly became our most popular set of podcasts. Everyone tuned in to see what do we do next month. So we had the idea, we'd heard some of our other colleagues were creating books and putting out their information in one kind of source. And we thought, this makes perfect sense for us is to take these popular episodes where we've gathered all of this information. Joanne from years of design, me from my extensive retail background and a little bit of my design, and everything that we brought to the show, and basically put it down on paper. So we've created a monthly guide with all the to-dos, and I think especially as well, we like to say the to-don'ts, or the
Yeah.
not to-dos in the garden, kind of breaking some of those myths. So it's just a
Mhm.
very easy, quick monthly snapshot for
Yeah.
everybody who's looking to get gardening.
And just to give background, our show actually records live as a radio show. So we were getting, when we say it was popular, it wasn't just popular in the downloads. Like we were getting people emailing us during the show. Okay, what do I do with the fertilizer now? Like, is now the time to do, put my fertilizer down, and which one do I do? And so they were really being proactive, and we realized that, it's you give someone a new gardener, a big landscape or a new installation, there's a lot to know, but there isn't, right? Because you don't have to deal with everything all at once. So that was our goal, was to like, okay, it's just this little bit that you need to do this month, and then you don't really have to do anything else. And I think that's where the book, we really felt like if we could break it out, because there are many types of gardeners too, right? Some are vegetable, some are just doing shrubs, some are doing annuals only. So and hence that's where our cat, we broke it up, and we're like, okay, with your annuals and perennials, this is all you have to do this month. And or not do, like, we that not do's a lot, right, Matt? We kind of joke about that, don't touch it, or don't walk in your, I mean, March, get off the grass, like it's not time to be out there doing anything, no raking those leaves and things. So, and we try to explain why as
Yeah, of
well.
course. Actually, I think that's a good segue, really, to what is clearly a passion of both of yours, which is that low maintenance, that sustainability, and how those two
Mhm.
connect. Could you maybe speak to why that's so important to both of you?
Yeah,
Matthew,
did you?
yeah,
Well,
No, you
I'll
go
go
ahead,
first.
Matt.
Yeah, I just believe very much like nature. If we look at nature, everything is part of that worldwide web, or um, that sustainability. It's all part of that cycle. So I really believe in just maintaining and sustaining that cycle, allowing beneficial insects to overwinter where they can. But you're staying off the lawn, for example, to use Joanne's example, to promote soil health and prevent compaction. So really just maintaining or going back to our roots. There's already a system in place. And I
Mhm.
know as an ornamental gardener, again, or gardening ornamentally, there is some change to the overall garden and how we want to create it, etc. But I think just reinforcing that sustainability and doing as little as we can possibly do while sustaining the local ecosystem, and our local ecosystem, even just within our garden as well. Again, soil health, planting natives, doing things that are low maintenance, and just supporting the biodiversity that I know that right now we're really looking at how much we've actually lost, and we are actually going to lose in the future as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think people, breaking it down by a little bit at a time, helps people stay on top of things and really understand why we're saying what we're saying. I think especially new gardeners, or when we've given them a new garden, or even people who might have established gardens that want some help, uh, the garden gets ahead of them. Like if they're not paying attention, they go 2 years and they're like all of a sudden like, oh, I'm unhappy, everything's overgrown and blah blah blah. But if we if we stay on top and just do those little bits, it doesn't have to be a big thing. You're not out there every weekend doing, that's something that clients will say. It was like, oh, I don't want to be out every weekend having to like work on my garden. And it's like, you don't have to. It should look after itself. If you just do the right things, mulching the garden, one of the examples, and something like that, and leaving the leaves in the winter. There's not a lot you need to do. We struggle with some of the end of the, year months of the year, because it's like, really, we don't want people doing too much. We want them to leave the leaves, let the leaves fall, and we talk, Matt talks of, we had a lot of lawn questions on the show, or the benefits of organic fertilizers and how much slower release they are and better for our water systems, and long-term health of the soil. They're not only feeding the promoting the grass to grow, but they are improving the soil, which will help long term when the lawn goes dormant in the summer, that type of thing. So,
and have you found in recent years that the public is receptive to these ideas, to that more low maintenance, to leaving some of that debris, the leaves in the garden, on the lawn, and so forth? What's your experience been?
I think it's coming. I think there's still, it's almost like even for me, there's peer pressure, right? Because my garden's like, my neighbors would think it's wild or whatever, right? Because I leave it and everybody else has got theirs all trimmed up and cut back and stuff. So I think it's coming. And I think the idea that it's lower maintenance, that you don't have to be out there and trim back all your hydrangeas and trim back everything in the fall, that it's okay. So I think it's coming, but I think there's still, that people that want it to be all put to bed, and trying to so it's really about changing that mindset that it's all right to leave it. And then, but the why, like, and I think when people see the birds in my garden, and the, in the winter, and the native, the insects in the spring, I mean, I think that's the slow burn, right? Is they like realize, okay, that's why we do it. But also it's because it's easier. Like, even if you're not an environmentalist, take a couple seasons off and not have to worry about it, is a good thing too.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's just, again, that slow change of mindset. And I think the core is really understanding why. And again, why it's part of that bigger cycle. And then we get, again, all those benefits of, oh, I don't have to be out here when it's rainy and it's cold, or, all the leaves drop
Mhm.
in a storm and it's just gross out and we don't want to be here. So again, I think just understanding, yeah, that why and the benefits. And like Joanne, like you said, just as you see them become cumulative and things restore themselves and return to your space, it really kind of gets them to click. But there's definitely that peer pressure out there. Again, we're
Mhm.
gardening ornamentally, right? We're doing it so it looks neat and tidy and pretty and just so. And I think that's a long tradition of that ornamental gardening. And we've kind of, again, like that mindset. Oh, it's very
Mhm.
wild, it's unkept, there's no purpose, it's weedy. And again, there's that why behind that I think we've just disassociated with, um, in our modern gardening. And I think we're moving back to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I don't know where the whole put the garden to bed thing started, right? Like, and especially a designed garden that will have, when, one of the first, it's funny because one of the first things people will ask us is for a seasonal garden, right? Well,
Mhm.
there's 4 seasons. So we will, and I'm sure all the landscape designers will tell you they're designing things that will look good in the winter.
Sure.
And then here we go and cut them back, like, and even as an industry, I mean, I think there's still, people who pay for garden maintenance, and they want the garden maintenance cuts the ornamental grasses back and cuts some of the stuff back. And I think that comes to educating, our clients to say, okay, we can clean up, do a fall cleanup, but these are the things that we're not going to touch, and this is why we're not going to touch them. So I think, some education even in our industry, you know, will go a long way.
For sure, for sure. So back to the book, would you mind telling us a bit about, some of the different subjects, topics, I guess sections that are covered?
Yeah, so as Joanne said earlier, every month we try to really break it down into a group of activities. So we start off things like seeds and bulbs. And in the earlier months, February, March, April, there's lots of information, there's lots of activities. And then as we move through the month, we touch on fruits and vegetables, getting them started, the do's and don'ts, the annuals and the perennials, the trees and shrubs, and then some design favorites as well. So really kind of each month is broken down into those sections where everyone can very quickly flip to whatever month it is and look at what they should be doing with those activities. So, what do I need to be doing to starting my seeds? What do I need to be doing to get my annuals and or perennials or trees and shrubs ready for the beginning of the year? But also all the way through the year. So we tackle, in the summer months where it gets really hot and dry, the stressful conditions. We tackle what to do and don't there, how to attack those conditions and make sure that your plants stay really healthy and strong all the way through. I think we also went through, as we go through all the months, we have individual sections as well, tackling some of the bigger questions like lawns, for example. On the podcast, it's a running joke. It's, can we rake our leaves now? Or when can I fertilize the lawn? And it's like the middle of February. So we tackle those type of questions. One of the ones that Joanne and I have also always had, not only from design clients and the podcast, but also just our other retail background, as well as cedars, taking care of cedars. We all love them for their evergreen appeal, their privacy that they grant us. But there's always issue with the cedar. So we break down into the cedars, things like understanding fertilizer, trimming clematis. And then we've rounded it off at the very end with a glossary so that we know that everybody's coming to gardening at a different skill level with a different skill set and experience. So we very much in the industry just splurt out garden jargon, and we all know what it is, but our homeowners may not. So we've kind of taken some of those common terms and built on them so that they can read through the book, or maybe they hear something as they're growing in their experience and they know what they're talking about, or they have a reference point to go back to. So we've tried to make it really, really thorough on each point, and each section will grow and shrink depending on what we do and don't need to do every month in that garden.
We do also talk about, so even though we say, this is what you do in March and this is what you do in April, a lot of that is very dependent on the weather, right?
Sure.
So, and even though we do say, it's your Ontario garden, so it's kind of geared to, 5B, zone 6 kind of thing. But because the steps don't change, it just might slightly move. Well, if you have an earlier spring, you might do things a little bit earlier. And then, but if we have a late spring, you might do things a little bit later, like even our fall this past year, right? It was much later, really. So we kind of really try to, there's some repetition because of that. So we let people know, it's not a hard and fast, if you haven't done this by, September 3rd, then you're behind. It's not that way. It's definitely a fluid thing. But it just helps, I think it makes things in bite size. So it doesn't overwhelm anybody. And I think it also, the glossary is great. And it's effective. I think the book is effective for whether you're an experienced gardener or just starting out, because it meets you where you are.
I got a question for both of you. I'd be curious what your thoughts are. Obviously, you're both passionate about sharing gardening, talking horticulture, sharing knowledge. What is it that you enjoy most about doing that? Why do you give so much on those topics, do you think?
Wow. Well, I think I'm passionate about my business, and it comes from that, right? Because it's not, design is just one part of it. And I know maybe I'm I'm unique. I don't know if I'm unique in that, but that is my passion, is helping people. And then, so I feel like to design a garden that I'm passionate about and that, improves their curb appeal, and even in the backyard, a new outdoor living space for them. And then just to walk away and leave them to fend for themselves, like that just breaks my heart, right? So I feel like some of the clients probably can't get rid of me because I'm dropping by and I'm checking on things. And, so I think I'm passionate about helping people be successful. That's the most important thing. And I'm passionate about the plants and them being successful. And so I want them to really enjoy their landscape and their plants, and be successful. Because I think that's, if everything dies or they're not happy with how things turned out, it's really hard. So I'm passionate about helping people and breaking it down so it is down to earth. It's practical advice, as opposed to, and that's why our book is like a nice little workbook. It's not a big heavy textbook that's daunting. And I think everybody has experience with plants, whether your garden's small or big, or whether you're just gardening in containers or indoor house plants. There's and vegetable gardens. We've seen the growth of vegetable gardens in our businesses, as well as on the radio show. And so I think helping people, and regardless of where they're doing it, I think that's why I'm passionate about it, Matt.
Yeah, you know what? I definitely echo that. I think we all have a natural affinity for nature and being with plants and out in the wild. And I just enjoy, again, seeing people be successful and explore that excitement and their own passion, and helping them be a part of that. That was my philosophy when I was in retail as well. I mean, I want to, obviously, we're in the business of selling and things like that. But my most important thing was seeing you be successful in your endeavors, making sure that I could share my passion so that you could be successful with that. And it's evolved into Natural Affinity, my design company. And I just, yeah, again, there's just nothing like having someone come back to you or call you or share their excitement. And I think, Joanne, we see that on the show. People write in, "Oh my gosh, we loved your tips, and my garden has never looked more beautiful this year," or "Oh, you helped me save my this or that." And it's just that's what I live for. That's why I do it. I've always loved plants since I was very young, but it's, again, just that interaction, that human connection, that
Sure.
natural affinity we have for it all that really drives me.
Sure. So if people listening, if they want to, listen to your show, your radio show, and your podcast, if they want to get the book, how can they do that?
Yeah, you know what? We are live every Monday night, as Joanne said. We recorded it as a live radio show on www.realityradio101.com. But we also then release it as a podcast. So on all major podcast provider, you can search down the Garden Path podcast. And there are years of evergreen and very specific content. We do our Month in the Garden series. We do deep dives on specific tree, shrubs, and perennials. We talk to other garden authors like ourselves, and as well as other things, topics like climate change and food
Sure.
sustainability, etc. So you can always find it there. You can find as well, the book is available on amazon.ca or .com, wherever your listeners might be able to buy it. And you can also find it through our websites as well. So I'm www.naturalaffinity.ca, and Joanne is www.down2earth.ca as well.
Awesome. Is there anything? Yeah, he nailed it. Anything else that you would like to share with the LO audience, about what you guys do and this new project of yours?
I just wanted to go back a little bit to the book, and just Matt mentioned it, was because we're also landscape designers. As much as we want to give all the tips and all the instructions, I did want to highlight the our favorites, our design favorites at the end of each book. So, plants that we use on clients' gardens, in our own gardens, that month that looked good. Because Matt had started, when we collaborated on he came up with this star in the garden. And so we were like, that would be good for the book too, to just remind people, okay, from a design standpoint, these are some things. And so choosing our design favorites was hard, right? And we only had room for like one each kind of thing per month. So I think, another thing to say, as I often say, is, great landscape start with a plan. And I know as an industry podcast, everybody realizes that, but there's a lot of reasons to that. And I think educating our industry also on the maintenance portion and how things are changing a little bit, and the importance of winter interest, and leaving, the plants for the bird, and planting things for the birds and for the butterflies in the spring. But I think we forget about the winter, the animals that need the berries in the winter, that type of thing.
Absolutely.
About the project, you know what? I think just like the podcast, as well as a number of us in the industry, we're always growing and learning and evolving and excited about new challenges. So I think that feeds again into our passion behind the book, as well as the podcast, just timely information throughout out the season. Uh, yeah, so I mean, if I would say if you or your listeners have any thoughts or questions or where we might be able to look next, we are always love
Mm.
to hear from our listeners or anybody. We always love input and feedback. So they could write us at Down the Garden Path Podcast at hotmail.com. We can be reached there for questions and other things. Outside of that, I guess the only other thing I would say is I just I just grateful for the opportunity we get to share it here with you and all the wonderful listeners uh, through LO. Landscape Ontario has done so much for our industry, especially here in Ontario, obviously, but as
Mhm.
well as all the other provincial associations
Sure.
supporting those local businesses and the amount of resources that you give out and
Yeah. It's a great
all those.
industry. I
Yeah.
just love this industry. I love how collaborative we are. Yeah, like I said, I was talking earlier before we started about the designers that I work, we collaborate all over the GTA and and beyond, with things. And so yeah, I think it's been great to be part of such a great industry. Even, from an industry standpoint, we love supporting our clients and our customers and our listeners and our home, other homeowners, but also being part of the horticulture industry is something I just love, and no matter what I'm doing, I'm going to be part of that. So
Yeah, we always have, I get that sense we're always here to do our own thing, but we're very cooperative and we like to see each other succeed and raise each other up. And that's just a wonderful part of the industry and how Landscape Ontario helps foster that.
mhm.
I love to hear it. And it was absolutely my pleasure to have you. And I appreciate you sending the book. I'm looking forward to really diving in. And thank you so much for your time and coming on and sharing with our audience.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you again for having us,
Yeah,
Scott.
thank you.
All right. Take care now.
Take care.
Thanks so much for listening to the Landscape Ontario podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I hope you'll consider sharing it with colleagues or maybe even your staff team. And please consider subscribing. It's free. New episodes come out every single month.